let's start though with the question of productivity, because one thing that economists have been walking around openly asking at this conference is, why can't we create more growth? Why are we stuck at or below 2%? And of course, a huge component of that is productivity. So are we measuring productivity right?
I think the question is, we're certainly not measuring productivity right, but then we didn't measure it right before either, so are we doing a worse job in measuring productivity now than we used to? And I think there are some arguments that suggest we are. Namely, we're looking at services for the most part, where we've seen growth, seeming productivity growth. And we've seen situations where there are big quality changes, and that makes it hard to measure productivity when you have services plus quality.
The argument, and it's one that was advanced at a panel here as well, has been that as amazing as networked computing has been, the real productivity enhancer was indoor plumbing, was internal combustion. So will networked computing actually provide the productivity boost that the Model T did?
Yeah. Well, I agree with Robert Gordon. The 20th century was a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
My grandfather said he was born when people got around by horses and buggies, and he lived to watch men walk in the moon. That was 70 years. That's really remarkable. So it's difficult to get boons like indoor plumbing twice. You're only going to get it once. But the kind of technological innovations we are seeing in IT are pretty incredible.
I mean, they are incredible, but are they creating economic growth? Because many of the things that they create then become free.
Yeah. Well, let me give you an example. Look at the GPS system. So GPS systems had a big, measurable productivity impact on the shipping, trucking, logistics industry for obvious reasons. That was in the late 1900s, early 2000s. Now the price has fallen so much that everybody has a GPS system. You don't get lost anymore. The kids aren't crying in the back seat. You don't have to sit fumbling these maps around. That's a big productivity increase in reality, but you're right, it doesn't show up in GDP because it's home production.
Oh, Dr. Varian, the kids are always crying in the back seat. But if, I mean, the question is always then, how do we turn this into policy? So policymakers are scratching their heads trying to figure out how we then create growth. Is productivity even the culprit, right? If what you're saying is we're seeing productivity exists that we aren't seeing in the data. So do we need to look somewhere else for the lack of growth? Because we're definitely measuring growth, and it's definitely not growing as much as it used to.
Right. Well, we saw a similar phenomenon around the turn of the century, the last century, the 1900s, where you had big technological advances in home production. You had washing machines, you had dryers, you had dishwashers, you had vacuum cleaners, lawnmowers, all of this stuff that made home production much cheaper, much easier. People were much more productive, didn't show up in GDP. And we've got a lot of that going on now, where many of the kinds of productivity advances we're seeing are not in a sector that's easily measurable.
How do you capture that in policy?
How do we capture that in policy? I think we should not be so obsessed with some of these measures of productivity, and we should continue as economists. We should continue trying to measure this unmeasurable phenomenon. We've done some stuff in that area. Other people are doing things. So it's not a completely bleak picture.
One of the things that's really changing the profession is this ready availability of so much data, troves of data. And if you're a young economist right now, you might be going to Google or some other firm that's sitting on all of this data where you can actually learn something about human behavior. Is there a way to generalize what it is that we're learning when we have all of these microtransactions that can help us do macroeconomic predictions? That's the holy grail.
Right. Well, there's two things. One is having more data. The other is having more timely data. So if you look at official statistics, they come out once a month. GDP comes out once a quarter, but you can look at a lot of these these online data measurements are coming out in a continuous stream. Google queries are released on an hourly basis.
So, I mean, on this Friday, I'm going to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics for the Jobs Day lockup. I'll come out and I'll report the numbers. Is there a time when I will also be going to the Google Jobs lockup?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look for queries. Go to Google Trends and look at queries like looking for a job, is anybody hiring, where's the unemployment office? These are taking the pulse of the labor market, these kinds of queries.